Siddharth Chatterjee, the UN resident coordinator in China, hit the headlines when his video of doing yoga in sub-zero temperatures went viral. He's made a 4.5-minute documentary titled Breathing for Good Health on how to practice deep breathing. Siddharth Chatterjee is a decorated former Indian military officer. He served in the elite para-SF regiment with postings in the Indian peacekeeping force in Sri Lanka and counter-insurgency operations in India's northeast. He's on a mission to educate and encourage people to practice deep breathing exercises for stress relief and rejuvenation. Now, he joins me today from Beijing to discuss fitness and the benefits of breathing. Mr. Chatterjee, welcome to the News9 Plus show.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you for having me on your show.
You know, it's interesting. I met you for the first time in 2019, and I met you 5 years later, and I couldn't recognize you the last time I saw you. You had literally, lost 20 kgs. Tell us about the story of your personal transformation through COVID.
Let's start with what COVID did to us, Sandeep. It struck us like a bolt of lightning. And in that flash of that lightning, we really saw the contours of human health emerge and the fragility of human health. Not just of human health, but health systems across the world. In fact, we thought the most developed countries had the most advanced health systems, and look at the attrition, the morbidity and mortality we witnessed there. So I think, COVID in many ways turned out also to be a great teacher. Now, prior to COVID, I was weighing about 85 kilos. I had hypertension with a systolic diastolic murmur of about 160 by 90. I was on cholesterol medicine for close to 15 years, 30 milligram cholesterol tablets. I just felt, unhappy with myself in the body I was living in. I was constantly in a state of acute stress, which was kind of building up over time. Even though I used to be very sporty, on an average, I would do a half marathon every week. But
and not to mention you're a special forces officer, so I mean that must count for a lot.
Well, but after you give up all that, I took a premature retirement in 1996 December. So, I moved on in life. And, when life becomes one where you give up on your real practices and you just, allow indulgences to overtake your life, I started falling sick very easily. For example, every year prior to 2020, I would get a flu, despite a flu vaccine, and I would be bedridden for about 2 weeks. And it was in 2020, I'd gone with a Kenyan delegation. I was that time the UN resident coordinator in Kenya to the Silicon Valley and then to Washington, DC, very successful visit. And, that morning I was supposed to leave for Nairobi, and I looked at myself in the mirror and I just felt that this is someone that I don't recognize, and where I had come to in terms of being, borderline obese, the state of, bad health, not feeling happy with myself, despite the fact it was a very consequential visit in terms of the UN-Kenya partnership. And I felt something had to change. So I was sitting at the lounge at the airport when I came across this gentleman called Wim Hof and his breathing practice. And that's when my curiosity got harnessed. And, I read a little bit about fasting. So that morning I decided I will not have breakfast. And when I got onto the plane, it was a long flight via Dubai to Nairobi, I ate nothing. And from the following morning, and this was March of 2020, when I started to practice this. And it has been a journey. It didn't happen overnight. And what I realized is that the power of the breath, which we call pranayama, and in China, it's the practice of qigong, is so powerful that modern medicine has still not been able to tap into the real potential that lies within our breath. Our ability to fast, our ability to be exposed to the cold, our ability to actually harness the immune system within ourselves. And just for your audience to know that in 1998 there was an American doctor that discovered nitric oxide. Now, nitric oxide, for which he got the Nobel Prize, is a signaling molecule in the cardiovascular system. Yes. It is what keeps our blood pressure normal, but it also prevents us from falling sick because it kills any virus or bacteria that comes in contact with it. So what's interesting is that our monks, in Indian history, this was well known. In Chinese history, it was well known. They knew there was something within our body which helps us to prevent from falling ill. Well, It all lies in our breath, in our ability to
It,
really conquer our breath. And when we conquer our breath, you learn to manipulate your brain, because the brain is your master. But
yes,
once you learn to manipulate your brain, you then start taking control of your health and life. And, ultimately, in the words of Herophilus, who said
right.
that, when health is absent, wisdom cannot reveal itself, art cannot manifest, strength cannot fight, wealth
Absolutely.
becomes useless,
And it all
intelligence
starts
cannot.
with it all starts with deep breathing. But tell us, Mr. Chatterjee, how did you choose this extreme video to raise awareness about breathing and pranayama in yoga? How did this video come about?
So what happened was, I'd been practicing this, and I noticed that in the past 4 years I have not fallen sick. I did not get COVID. My son got COVID here.
Right.
People around me, my entire office got it, and I didn't. But I was reading all the literature around it. Andrew Huberman, who's a neuroscientist at Stanford, reading the books of David Sinclair on fasting, who's at Harvard. So I was putting the science together. And when I started to practice this, I noticed that as I went more into the cold and challenged myself in inclement weather, I noticed that my body would actually adjust to it. Our body produces something called brown fat, which we lose
Yes.
in time. I was able to resurrect it and bring it back. In fact, Sandeep, I have a level of fitness which actually is slightly superior to what I had in the special forces. Let me give you an example. In 3 minutes, I'm able to execute 100 push-ups and 55 pull-ups. I'm able to do a half marathon now in 1 hour and 20 minutes, which I used to 1 hour and 40 minutes, which I used to do in 2 hours and 10 minutes in Kenya. So there are dramatic changes which have taken place. At the foundation of it is our breath. Over to you.
Absolutely, and that's fascinating that you are today over 50 and you're fitter than what you were in the special forces back in the day, over 2 decades ago. That's absolutely fascinating to hear. But
I'm not over 50, I'm 60.
oh, right, I couldn't tell. But Mr. Chatterjee, India is looking at a health emergency right now. People aren't eating right, we're not sleeping, we're addicted to all kinds of screens, small and big. What would be your advice to Indians who want to follow your footsteps? How can one become like Siddharth Chatterjee? Maybe not to the level of meditating and breathing in the snow, but how can one lead a healthy life? What's your advice to Indians who are watching you today?
What I'm doing can be done by anybody. I am no exception. Sandeep, please understand, and let me emphasize that with every emphasis at my disposal. Anybody can do it. But step number one is give up sugar.
Right.
The entire world has an addiction to sugar, refined sugar. And that is what is a major cause for chronic diseases, such as diabetes, such as hypertension, such as cardiovascular diseases. It is leading to obesity. Everybody is getting more and more obese. And we have a reward system that you reward our children. They do something good, you give them chocolate. If they are crying, you give them chocolate, little knowing how much of damage we are doing to them. You want to get old quickly, consume as much of sugar as possible. It's the fastest. It actually makes you age faster than consuming cigarettes. But sugar is more addictive than heroin. So the first step is your diet, is to give up sugar. Combine that with breath. Breathing is very important. So different forms of pranayama. I do a very difficult type of breathing, but I would suggest that people should go to the difficult part of breathing, because it's like going to a gym. When you pick up stronger weights, your arms can become stronger.
Absolutely.
So breathing is key to that. A third element is fasting. We have lost the value proposition of fasting. Why? Because we are unable to control this guy, which is what is known as the Pavlovian response in biology. And we are addicted to food. It's not the need, it's the greed for food. We are programmed to eat breakfast, lunch, dinner. Last 4 years, I have eaten 1 meal a day. Every 6 months, I fast for 5 days, water only. Every 3 months, for 3 days, water only. Every day, I will eat in the evening in a window of 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the evening, because I have many official functions to attend to. But in between, I would not be eating anything, I would be consuming water. Why? Because our pancreas is producing insulin. Our body is in an insulin overdrive, so over time we develop insulin resistance, and therefore all the problems with diabetes, and therefore we have to depend on pharmaceutical companies like Novo Nordisk, who provide insulin, and then we become insulin dependent from external sources. but the damage it is doing to the body is
Yes.
extensive,
Right.
But the issue is you can resurrect yourself. In fact, today, as per the doctors here, my biological age is around 30. My heart age is at around 20. So when I used to wake up in the morning in 2019, 2018, 2020, my resting heart rate used to be at around 75. Today, my resting heart rate drops to about 36, which, by the way, is the same resting heart rate as someone called Eliud Kipchoge from Kenya,
Right.
and he's one of the elite marathon runners. So you
Absolutely.
can actually reverse aging, and reverse aging takes hard work. It's a combination of fasting, it's a combination of breath work, it's a combination of high intensity interval training. And I do 10 minutes of high intensity interval training. I don't have the time to spend 1 or 2 hours in a gym. In fact, it's utterly unnecessary. So about 10 to 15 minutes of high intensity interval training. But a cold exposure is magical. And when I talk about a cold exposure is have a warm bath, but
Right.
take it to the cold. And the cold ramps up your immune system. It ramps up your metabolic activity. The brain does not like the cold. So you're overriding a signal from the cold. And by the way, what it does, it gives you a rush of dopamine. So I get
Right.
the effect of dopamine for 16 to 18 hours in a day. You get the same rush of dopamine by, having a mithai, having a barfi or something, but that's
Yes.
for about 5 minutes. But over time, it's like the law of diminishing returns. You constantly need more and more and more. And therefore, you become that addiction to sugar takes place because you're getting that signaling of dopamine.
Right.
You can
Absolutely.
actually take it all
I mean,
back.
that's
What I'm trying to say is
yes.
anybody can do it.
Tell us about the comments that you've been getting. Your videos have gone viral. I've seen everyone from Anand Mahindra to Sangeeta Reddy commenting on it, Eric Solheim as well. Tell us about what you felt when you read those comments, and because health and fitness is something that is a global concern. It's not just an Indian concern now. How did you react to this outpouring of expressions from all your friends, colleagues, and well-wishers?
What I realized over these years of COVID, when the world suffered, the entire world suffered, people saw what the consequence of poor health is. The impact of COVID has created an economic crisis that rivals the Great Depression of the 1930s. It ruptured families who could not even attend to funerals and cremations because of that. But what it showed was not just the fragility of the human race, our health systems, but the fragility of the way we are living our lives. We are, the consequence of the way we are living. And who knows what is the next pandemic looming out there, which would be far more deadly with higher velocity.
Right.
I genuinely believe that my purpose as a United Nations civil servant, as an international civil servant, is about the Sustainable Development Goals.
Right.
Sustainable Development Goal number 3 is about universal health coverage. What does universal health coverage mean? It is about good health and well-being, and that's why I quoted Herophilus to say that is the foundation for social prosperity, for family foundations, for communities, for nation states to progress. Now, as individuals, because it's not just governments who can ensure good health. Ultimately, it is up to us as individuals, whether we want to smoke, drink, consume lots of sugar. It's an individual choice. But it is also an individual choice to have good health. I'm a father. My son is 13 years old. I want to be there for him, fit as a fiddle. I want to make sure that I'm with my colleagues. I'm in a state of fitness and well-being so that I can portray that sense of fitness and well-being around me. So I actually feel that I have a purpose in life. Having lived in about 13 countries prior to China, I have seen how poor health systems can really have such a negative impact. I've seen it in my own home with my father, who had a stroke and was bedridden for 7 years. I don't want to be in that situation ever. So I have taken charge of my health, and I've realized the consequence it has been by taking charge of it. I hope I'm able to spread that message. I believe the greatest gift one human being can give to another is the knowledge of good health.
The knowledge of good health, and you've given us so many lessons there, Mrs. Chatterjee. The snow yogi himself telling us his life lessons and his secret of a 60-year-old man who has the health of a 30-year-old. And this is huge for Indians who are struggling with ill health, who are addicted to sugar, and they have all kinds of lifestyle disorders. But thank you very much, Siddharth Chatterjee, for joining us this evening on the News9 Plus show and telling us the secrets of the snow yogi. Thanks for watching.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Good to see you, Sandeep. God bless.
Streaming on News9 Plus. News is now content. Subscribe and get free vouchers.